is finally here. I've been dreaming about doing this podcast for a couple of years. I've had countless conversations with so many people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, beliefs, identities. And I found that no matter where someone falls politically, when we talk about our experiences, and I mean really talk about them, we usually land in a place of unexpected camaraderie. So I just want to say to everyone, welcome to the liberal conservative. No, I'm not a conservative. Yes, I am a full-on liberal. The reason I called it a liberal conservative, firstly, is because it's a play on words, and TLC stands for tender love and care, which is, what our country and our laws and our checks and balances really need right now. But also because I had a lot of liberal friends that always tell me that they're liberal, but that they're conservative fiscally, or, they do that thing where like, I'm liberal, but I'm in the middle. And it's such a funny nuance because it's really kind of like, that's not really a thing. I always thought, I always thought like, if you only knew that those are just like political constructs that are given to us on purpose, right? To keep us from actually paying attention to what's really going on. But anyway, I've also found that people's insecurities often shape their opinions. So I can't tell you how many people of color I've met who quietly distance themselves from their own colorness. How many queer people have closeted lives, unsure of whether they can be fully seen. Human beings are complex. There is no black and white answer to every problem, but truth begins when we understand and accept who we are, and when we extend that same compassion to others. When it comes to politics, the most important thing to realize is this. It's not black people versus white people. It's not Americans versus immigrants. It's corrupt politicians versus the will and health of the people. And as much as we like to think that corrupt politicians belong more to one party than the other, they don't. They both work for the same donor class. Some politicians and perhaps some of the party of a particular party is willing to maybe jeopardize the will and health of the people a little more than others. That is, definitely maybe a nuance that we can explore. But both parties definitely belong to the donor class, right? And as long as they keep us fighting with each other, blaming some invented boogeyman, whether it's abortion or immigrants or people of color, we won't see the real enemy because the real boogeyman is them. Governments are corrupt. And yes, even our own. Trust me, I was quite shocked when I learned that a couple of decades ago, but it's a fact. We've been sold a false narrative, one we not only accepted, but internalized. If there's one thing we can thank social media for, it's this. It's cracked open the vault, gave us access to truth, real, raw, uncomfortable truth we never had access to in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But human beings are resilient, and we survived World War II, 9/11, COVID, and so much more. And now we have to survive this. But to do that, we have to unite for one cause, the human cause. We have to accept facts as facts, even when they sting. We have to learn how to fight back locally, federally, culturally. We have to stick together as citizens. They may have sold us a false bag of goods, but we turned that bag into an identity. We believed in the promise of America, and they can't take that from us now. It's in our blood and it's in our DNA. And if they won't keep that promise, then it's up to us to do so. Let's talk about the freedom lie and who was left behind. So as I said, we have to start by accepting uncomfortable truths. And here's one that may sting. The American Revolution, the war we glorify every 4th of July with fireworks, flags, and slogans like liberty for all, was really not freedom for all. Yes, the men who led that revolution were radicals in their time. They challenged monarchy. They opposed taxation without representation. They imagined something the world hadn't seen before, government by the people. But the problem is their definition of the people was tragically narrow. Part of it was because of the construct of their time, so we have to acknowledge that. But part of it was also self-preservation. They wanted freedom for themselves. And once the war was won, they structured this country to protect capital, preserve power, and enshrine ownership in the hands of white, wealthy male landowners. Let's be honest about who got left out of the new democracy they created. Women who ran farms, spied for the cause, and nursed wounded soldiers, denied a voice. Enslaved Africans, promised freedom in exchange for fighting on both sides, denied their liberty. Indigenous tribes who were slaughtered, betrayed, and driven from their lands, they were erased. Even poor white men without property were pushed to the margins. The American system was designed to serve a very specific class. Everyone else, black, brown, female, queer, indigenous, poor, was either invisible or written into the fine print as a problem to manage. America did not become a democracy in 1776. It became an oligarchy built on a revolutionary marketing campaign. And that's the origin story we're still living in. But I don't believe every principle they wrote was hollow. I don't believe the Constitution or the Bill of Rights were meant to be stagnant. America was and still is an experiment, and experiments are meant to evolve. The founders should have been more inclusive, yes. That is their great failure. But we fail too. We fail if we don't push the experiment forward. And that's that's what starts with something this country has never truly done. The oppressing class, those who benefit from exclusion, must recognize their privilege, must admit their role in inequality, must understand that inclusion is not a threat, it's not erasure, it's expansion. Until that reckoning happens, we'll keep circling the same storm, calling it freedom when it's really just a prettier form of control. So capitalism was born from slavery. This is going to be the next part we're going to tackle. Okay, so I'm going to give you a really good example of capitalism was born from slavery and how we just still haven't come to grips with that. Like it's kind of astonishing, but let me give you this analogy, which I'm sure you've heard before. Let's make it really, really plain. Imagine you're playing Monopoly, but for the first 1,000 rounds, you're not even allowed to roll the dice. Now, if you know anything about Monopoly, you know that by then the game is pretty much over, right? Like if you're playing Monopoly with a group of 5 people and they're playing for like 3 weeks on end, right? Trading property and doing all of these things, and you're 1,000 rounds basically, and you're not able to even roll the dice, you know that like the cards are stacked against you at this point, right? So you're stuck on go, watching everyone else move, watching them buy boardwalk, park place, every railroad, every utility, watching them build hotels, raise rents, and collect $200 every time they pass go. Meanwhile, you stay parked motionless for generations. And then finally, after 1,000 rounds, the rules change. You're allowed to move now, but there's a catch. You still don't get $200 when you pass go, and you still have to pay rent when you land on property, just like everybody else. You still have to pay taxes, fees, and penalties, just like the players who have been accumulating wealth for centuries before you ever had a chance. And just when you finally find a way to pool your resources, strategize, and start building something of your own, they burn it down. Literally, they bomb it, like they did to Black Wall Street and Tulsa. They dismantle it, like they did to Black communities in countless cities under the guise of urban renewal. And then they have the audacity to tell you, if you're still behind, it's your fault. That's not a free market. That's not even meritocracy. That's generational theft, actually. Slavery wasn't just a moral catastrophe. It was the foundation of American wealth. The cotton that built Wall Street, the insurance companies that insured enslaved bodies, the Ivy League universities whose halls were funded by blood money. And when the chains of slavery were broken, the chains of debt and poverty and mass criminalization took their place. Slavery became sharecropping. Sharecropping became Jim Crow. Jim Crow became redlining. Redlining became mass incarceration. And through every mutation, the players who started 1,000 rounds ahead kept their advantage and kept rewriting the rules to maintain it. When people rebel against this system, it's not because they're lazy or criminal. It's because oppression breeds rebellion. Desperation breeds survival instincts. And survival in a rigged game will always be criminalized by the people who rigged it. And this punishment isn't just prison. It's living with no safety net. It's being denied loans, housing, education. It's waking up every day in a system that tells you explicitly and silently, you will never catch up. We are living in a country where the descendants of those who were never allowed to buy Boardwalk are now being arrested for trying to survive the game. That's not freedom. That's economic violence. And it's still happening right now.
So, the rise of billionaire class and the theft of America's future.
So let's talk about real world descendants of old money oligarchs today, right? So that we can make a direct line to what was then and what is now. Let's talk about the Vanderbilts, original patriarch, Cornelius Vanderbilt, railroads and shipping tycoon in the 1800s. The modern names, Gloria Vanderbilt, fashion designer and socialite, inherited millions, built her own brand with an enormous safety net others never had. Anderson Cooper, CNN anchor, Gloria's son. He publicly downplays his inheritance, but was born into extreme privilege. Gloria's father literally died with millions, and the money kept cycling despite some family losses over time. Gloria's fortune allowed her to try, fail, and try again, something poor creators can rarely afford. Anderson Cooper, meanwhile, stepped into elite journalism circles, effortlessly bearing the Vanderbilt name even when he distances himself from it. The Rockefellers. Also original patriarch was John D. Rockefeller Jr., founder of Standard Oil, America's first billionaire fortune built partially through monopolistic and exploitative practices. Modern descendants, David Rockefeller, banker and political influencer, CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank, passed away with a net worth of $3.3 billion. Nelson Rockefeller, former U.S. vice president under Ford. Today, hundreds of Rockefeller heirs, the Rockefeller Family Fund, Rockefeller Foundation, and various family trusts controls billions in assets plus political influence through philanthropy. The estimated combined Rockefeller family net worth is between $8 and $10 billion. They have quiet power. Most Rockefeller descendants don't flash personal wealth. They channel it into thinking tanks, political influence, global banking, environmental lobbying, and philanthropy, which also happens to shield their wealth from taxes. The Bush family. Prescott Bush, banker, helped finance industrial operations and benefited from Nazi Germany pre-World War II, a historical fact. Also a U.S. senator. Modern names, we all know them. George H.W. Bush, the 41st president. George W. Bush, the 43rd president. Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida. We're not even going to talk about the fact that he was governor when his brother was running, and how I lived in Florida during this time. And I remember the map on my television turning blue for Al Gore and then cutting to commercial abruptly and then coming back from commercial and turning red. Let's just leave that there. But that is a fact. I was living it. I was watching it. That's what happened. Their net worth is likely about $500 million spread across oil, politics, finance, and land holdings. They parlayed early dirty money into political dynasties. Bush oil wealth translated directly into political seats and policies benefiting corporations. The Walton family, Walmart dynasty, founder Sam Walton. Modern names, Alice Walton, worth $64 billion, Jim Walton, worth $66 billion, Rob Walton, worth $65 billion. Their total family worth is $200 billion. The Waltons now own more wealth than the bottom 40% of all Americans combined. These families not only inherited financial wealth, they inherited social capital, political power, and gatekeeping roles. They got to make mistakes without it ruining their futures. They controlled narratives, media, and politics and culture. Meanwhile, people of color built the physical and economic infrastructure of America and were locked out of generational opportunity every step of the way. While survivalists have been criminalized and depressed, consolidation of power has been legalized for the privileged. The American Revolution might have freed us from British kings, but it didn't free us from aristocracy. It just gave us new kings with American names. Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Morgan, Carnegie, they weren't just businessmen. They were monopolists. They cornered oil, railroads, steel, and banking, while exploiting labor, crushing unions, and expanding wealth built on stolen land and stolen bodies. Hundreds of years later, those who started the game 1,000 rounds ahead are still passing go, still collecting, still rewriting the rules to lock others out. And those who are locked out, they're still being blamed for not working hard enough. Because while they were passing down skyscrapers, we were passing down survival stories. Because while they were securing trust funds, we were burying trust in a system that never meant to protect us. Every time we rise, they move the goalposts. They redraw the maps, they rewrite the policies, they reset the economy, and still we are told this is a meritocracy. But it isn't. This is not a land of opportunity, it's a land of inheritance. Until we confront that brutal truth, we will keep mistaking oligarchy for freedom.
And finally, the collapse we're living through and how we rebuild.
So here we are, the descendants of enslaved people, the daughters of silenced women, the survivors of stolen land, stolen wages, and stolen dreams. And despite 250 years of rigged games, despite every trap laid to stop us, we are rising. We're building businesses, we're winning elections, we're creating art, science, technology, and movements. We are outpacing the very system that was designed to destroy us. And you want to know why America feels so unstable right now? Because they see it. They see that after centuries of stacking the deck, oppressing, locking us out, and burning down our progress, we are still here. And we're not just surviving, we are thriving. That's what Donald Trump represents. He's the match being struck by the old aristocracy. He's not an aberration, he's a symptom. Trump is their desperate attempt to torch the table before too many of us have a seat, because they're terrified. They see that the oppressed, the marginalized, the underestimated are on the verge of beating them at the game they rigged for centuries. Imagine that. Spending 250 years oppressing people of color and women, spending 250 years hoarding opportunity, and still find yourself afraid because the very people you tried to crush are winning anyway. That's why they would rather burn it all down than play fair. And here's the truth. Trump isn't doing this alone. The system itself, the courts, the corporations, the banks, the politicians, it's all working exactly the way it was built to work. Trump is just the ugly face right now on a machine that's been humming beneath the surface since 1776. They want to call us lazy. Newsflash. The real laziness belongs to the oppressors. Those who were handed privilege on a silver platter but still refused to compete fairly. They never learned to adapt. They never learned resilience. They never learned grit because they never had to. Meanwhile, we, the oppressed, became experts at surviving impossible odds. We became entrepreneurs because we were locked out of jobs. We became strategists because we had to make $1 stretch 1,000 miles. We became warriors not because we wanted to, but because survival demanded it. And now, after centuries of mastering adversity, we're winning, and they hate it. But here's what they'll never understand. You can't unlearn the skills born from struggle. You can't unmake the strength built in the fire. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. We are here, we are rising, and we are not going anywhere. This isn't the end of America's experiment, it's the rebirth of it. Not the America they designed for themselves, but the America we are finally building for all of us. I hope that you've enjoyed episode 1 of the Liberal Conservative podcast, Ground Zero. I cannot wait to take this ride with you over the next few months as we dive deep into season 1 of the Liberal Conservative. Launch week is a special week because we're kicking things off with 2 episodes, so make sure to join us again on June 5th for episode 2, where we'll break down one of the most important elections happening right now, the New Jersey gubernatorial race. Primaries are happening June 10th, and it is absolutely critical that we know who we are voting for, that we vet our candidates thoroughly, and that we show up informed and powerful at the polls. And don't worry, if you're not yet registered to vote in New Jersey, it's not too late. Here's what you can do. If you miss the registration deadline, you can still vote by casting a provisional ballot at your polling place on election day. When you arrive at your polling site, ask for a provisional ballot. You will fill it out just like a regular ballot, and election officials will verify your eligibility after election day before your vote is counted. Your voice still matters. Vote still counts. So mark your calendars, do your research, and remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. I'll see you back here on June 5th for episode 2. One last thing I want to leave you with, and that is that my closing for today is, I love my country. I love the opportunities it's given me. But just because I love someone or something doesn't mean I'm blind to its shortcomings. True love demands truth. And the truth is, we can build a better, stronger, safer, happier, and more equal America. Not someday, not maybe, but once and for all. And it starts by uniting together, refusing to let divisions that were manufactured for profit divide us any longer, because at the end of the day, we all bleed red. We are one human race. Good people come in every shape, every color, and every walk of life. Colors do not make souls, character does. And together, if we choose it, we can finally fulfill the real promise of America: liberty and justice for all. See you in 2 days.